Hello, my name is Lynn Wells with George Mason University Center for Resilient and Sustainable Communities, and it gives me great pleasure to be here with Ali Mustafá-Ramos with the Puerto Rico Center for Science, Technology, and Research Trust. Annie?
Hi, my name is Eli Mustafa. I'm the program manager for the Resiliency and Business Innovation, which is an I6 grant from the Economic Development Agency that's managed by the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust. It's a not-for-profit organization um, that promotes and encourages to do research in science and technology and many other things in the area of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, our topic tonight is Be Prepared to Bounce Forward Better, Building Sustainability and Community Resilience through Local Businesses. And this will be a case study from Puerto Rico. So a little talking about what is resilience. So resilience actually is the ability to cope, coping capacity, plus the ability to adapt, which in longer terms sometimes is phrased as the ability to anticipate something, to withstand a disaster, to recover from it, which is really coping capacity, and then the ability to adapt. In fact, there are three kinds of resilience. There is a resilience for cultural, which is an organization willing to stand up and keep fighting when it's under stress. There's an operational resilience, are the networks and communications channels sufficient for you to get the key messages out internally and externally. And then there is a financial element of that. You have enough financial resilience. The third type of resilience then is infrastructural. Namely, do you understand the dependencies among communications and power and water and how those affect your business and how they might impact you? So, but I make the point that resilience is not just bouncing back to the pre-crisis status quo. What you want to do is leverage the stresses and shocks so that you actually wind up stronger. What we would say is be prepared to bounce forward better. And that's what we're trying to build in the sense of resilience. Now, some people combine or confuse security and resilience, and they're really quite different. Security is sort of like, how do you lock things up and hunker down to keep bad things from happening? Resilience says, I know bad things are going to happen. So how do we achieve the organization's goals under any level of shock and stress? How do we fight back? How do we emerge stronger? You imagine the cyber situation. You know that the network's going to be penetrated one way or another. So it's not a question of not being hacked. The question is, how do you prepare yourself to be able to keep operating after something like that happens? A resilient capacity, and it is a capacity, it's not a program, it's not a strategy, it's actually the capacity of an organization. And a resilient capacity is a function of leadership. It has to be built at all levels. You have to encourage resilience among your people, from the board of directors down to the people on the shop floor. It needs to be nurtured, it needs to be made sustainable, and treated as a positive business asset. It should be resourced, because the more resilient you are, the stronger your business is going to be, and the more likely it's going to be to withstand disruption. And again, you want to build this into an enduring organizational capacity that can sort of survive transitions in the leadership. From adaptation, Darwin, but also the columnist Tom Friedman says, it's not the strongest nor the smartest that survive, but it's the most adaptable. And the question is, how do you learn from bad things that happen? And learning only happens when behavior changes. It's not enough to write a report. It's not enough to do an after action review. You have to actually cause people to change behaviors if they're actually going to truly learn the lessons. And this means you have to be able to analyze shocks and see what's going on. There is no easy answer. There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that's going to do to make you resilient. It's built on a foundation of ethics and principles and governance and compliance. The details are important. You need to understand your business, your area, and how to benchmark, how to plan for the specific thing that's going to affect you. And you need to be continuously improving. But sometimes you're not going to be able to bounce forward that. Sometimes, for example, if you started in the Puerto Rican case, a tourist business just about the time that the earthquakes began and you're part of the archipelago, and then the COVID hit, and then the recovery from the hurricanes, maybe you have to think about doing something different. And the term there is pivot. So how can you adjust? How can you pivot to doing something new? And this all comes back again to adaptability. You need to be able to plan for the unexpected. You need to use foresight to understand what's going on, and understand that the new unnormal after the crisis may be something very different than it was beforehand. So the velocity of change is going to vary by sector. Some sectors actually are thriving in this environment. If you're in IT and things like that, others, if you're in tourism, can be very hard hit. So how do you adjust your marketing, your research and development, your promotion, to take advantage of your world? Also understand the legal regulations, the resources. And the real key here is to learn from your experiences. It's not just one thing that's going to happen. These are going to have to be adjusted over time, and just have to find ways to develop new expertise. So during the course, we had a workbook, and the Chamber of Commerce and the UPS Foundation have actually put together a very good workbook 101 on business resilience. And it teaches you about how to teach business owners about how to protect their operations, their data, their people, their buildings, their equipment, their inventories against whatever kind of threats they regard as most challenging. And we actually worked through this in the course, and I think people found it useful in order to give themselves better understanding. So there are things you can do. One of the things that's really impressed me about what Puerto Rico and the Trust have done is they really have made an effort to build a resilient business community through education and research. And they've done a lot of training, and Annie will talk about that. But this is really important because Puerto Rico faces a number of really serious challenges. In addition to the hurricanes that are only likely to get stronger because of changes in climate, you now have we've had earthquakes there. The global supply chain has been significantly disrupted, of course, by COVID, and understanding how that's going to affect the island. So the issues with workforce, how a lot of people have been leaving the island for other places. The workforce is aging. On the other hand, it is an educated country, the educated workforce, and there are a lot of opportunities there. Plus, the Puerto Rican people are resilient, their attitude is good. And so how do you leverage that in order to make Puerto Rico into a strong point for the Caribbean, for the region as a whole? And that's one of the things that we have tried to contribute to, but also I know that the Trust is working very hard on developing. So Annie, let me ask, how are you using education, training, and mentoring to build a more resilient, sustainable Commonwealth?
Thank you, Len. First of all, our program, that is less than 2 years old, was created because of a disaster, the proposal was written because of a disaster, which was to help in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in September 2017 to help businesses become resilient. So it's interesting because during our meetings with George Mason University and Linton's team, we were first focusing on, a little bit here about focusing on the hurricane, and then the earthquake happens, COVID happened, and we ourselves have to become a little bit more adaptive. So and we were able to respond to that pretty fast. So the trainings that we were giving, we were going to give, and the material, we were kind of adapting it to ourselves as well. And it was interesting because prior to the courses that we did with Linton, we have invited Leanne Hackman, who is a world-known author of books regarding resiliency and preparation, and with some serious books called Master Your Disaster. And we have invited her in November 2019. And then we had the earthquakes, different earthquakes on January. So that little by little we were helping prepare our ecosystem on how to be more resilient and more adaptive, not necessarily to hurricanes, but to other things. That yes, we're in a hurricane, we are on our earthquake zone, but we are more prepared for hurricanes. So these kind of courses and trainings really are helping our businesses and our ecosystem to not to necessarily continue with what they used to have, but as Linton mentioned, to pivot and adapt to other disasters that they might or they could encounter.
Good. So of the work you've done here in 2019, 2020, what do you consider to be the most successful?
Being able to impact with the different trainings and the courses over 1,500 businesses and people. When we created the courses, we had to keep in mind that we wanted to impact quickly two different I don't want to say market, but two different groups. One of them was directly the businesses, right? And helping them create a resilience plan. Keeping in mind that the difference between the resilience plan and the continuity plan is that they have to be aware when they need to pivot or even to just put an end to the business and create or create something else to cut their losses short, right? So impacting that people was a priority for us, but also it was a priority to us to train those people, professors, NGOs that were supporting these businesses and teach them and give them the tools on how to help those businesses to do their resilience plan and to become more resilient. So being able to impact over 1,500 people in a year with the different activities that we've done, that was pretty awesome. And thank God for data and keeping for the data.
But you also, besides just training business people, you trained educators and you trained civic leaders, and it's a very broad scope of the population. Who was involved in this training?
In these trainings were involved presidents of companies, CEOs from small, medium, and large company, from sole owners to companies that had over 100 employees, like some manufacturers. Puerto Rico is very known for their pharma, and it was very interesting to have a couple of them in our courses. So we definitely, we were surprised because usually they have more resources than the smaller companies. So we were surprised to have a variety of individuals that were seeking this kind of assistance and help. They came from all over Puerto Rico, from the north, from the south, professors, NGOs, from agriculture, restaurants, hotels, you just name it. It was a variety of people that were able to take our courses, and also bring not necessarily the person in charge or the the top level management, but also other people that were on other levels of the organization as well.
So now that COVID hopefully is beginning to recede, how do you see the business environment changing in Puerto Rico? What are some of the new opportunities, and how do you plan to change how does the trust plan to change the education and training and other activities?
We will be focusing now on innovation. Certainly it's been a year. Puerto Rico still have a lot of tough measures. For example, our restaurants are still on 30% occupancy, and that's pretty tough. And until recently, our curfews were pretty strict. Our Christmases, Puerto Rico is known for the longest Christmas. They start Thanksgiving Day, and they end about 2 weeks after January, on Martin Luther King's literally. And that was a big impact because our businesses, we had a curfew that started at 8 p.m. So everything had to be closed at 8, and Sundays were closed. So a lot of people, or many businesses, decided to do and to change from brick and mortar to e-commerce. So that was a big change for our. And of course, the opportunities now arrive in terms of creating a better grid, electricity grid system also. And, it's like a disaster after a disaster. Being able to do joint efforts and to see different opportunities or other views. For example, many restaurants were closed, so what did they decide? They decided to rent the kitchen. So what is called ghost kitchen. So they rent the kitchen, and people will do the cooking and everything from one kitchen that they have all of the materials, and then they will sell it online, or they will sell it on delivery. Many delivery services were created because of that. Of course, the use of the Zoom, as everybody else, our teams, to create value. And it was interesting because, for example, these courses were supposed to be given in a presential way originally. And because we changed them to virtual because of COVID, we were able to impact people from the US, from India. There was somebody from France that took the course. So the impact was, I guess, broader, you can say. And for example, Leanne Hackman was able to benefit as well and adapt this course and to the Canada market in her area as well. So yeah, the impact was broader.
So for the last minute or two, how can the audience of the conference help with your initiatives? How can they engage with the trust? What can they do to support Puerto Rico?
We're looking for innovation as well. We have, many of you probably will know about the Act 2022, now is Act 60, which are some acts, one to promote export services from Puerto Rico. So people are coming here to Puerto Rico, creating export services company, and they only pay 4% of their income. There are more details into that, but basically that's the whole idea. And also bring individual investors to invest in Puerto Rico. and to generate jobs and to generate more and to create economic development. So, there's some things that people from our audience could be interested in. It's a place to do business, and this is the moment.
Ani, muchas gracias. Thank you so much.